Hello, everyone. Today, we will be delving into yet another situation that is really upsetting. Please stay active and subscribe if you would like to support my channel. I would be quite appreciative of your aid. Let's begin. A person's life might frequently be negatively impacted for a long time. While some people flourish in demanding settings, many others are stuck in circumstances from which they can hardly get out. However, what if your own family members are the source of those negative influences? Is it possible to escape? The horrific details of the Scarlet Grace Killing story stunned the world and caused a global uproar. Many people think that Scarlet's mother's greater monitoring and direction could have prevented the terrible catastrophe that occurred during a family vacation at a tropical resort. In July 1992, Scarlet Grace Killing was born in the suburbs of Hartford. She was the third of 9 children born to Fiona Mowen, a woman whose interest in hippie philosophy influenced her perspective on life. Fiona did not marry any of the 5 people she had children with. Unfortunately, none of the fathers continued to support Fiona or their kids financially or kept in touch with them after they split up. At a very young age, Fiona became a mother. In 1988, she gave birth to her first son, Halor. Then, a year and a half later, Silas. 2 years later, Scarlet appeared. Richard Killing, the father of these 3 kids, was a well-known construction firm employee and was of Libyan heritage. He gave the children his last name and acknowledged the children as his own, but he never married Fiona or had any meaningful relationship with them thereafter. Fiona started seeing Chris Osborne, a British stockbroker, shortly after she broke up with Richard. Fiona had 2 kids from this marriage, Christy Kiss, born in 1995, and Marilyn, born in 1994. But shortly after the birth of their second child, the couple called it quits. Now a mother of 4, Fiona relocated to London in 1996 with the intention of changing her life. She met a man named Paul, whose last name is unclear, while working as a seller at a nearby vegetable market. After they started dating, Fiona gave birth to 2 additional children, a daughter named Kate in 1998 and a son named Isaac in 1997. After moving to Devon, the family settled in a low-income area with a high crime rate. Tragically, Paul left shortly after the birth of their daughter, leaving Fiona to care for the children on her own. Due to short-lived liaisons with other men, Fiona had 2 more daughters by the late 1990s, Trinity and Aurora, who were born a year apart. None of Fiona's previous partners continued to be engaged in their children's lives, adopted parental responsibilities, or offered financial support. Being a single mother presented Fiona with many difficulties. She struggled to keep a consistent job without nobody to monitor her kids. The family consequently had to rely on meager government aid, which was frequently insufficient to cover even the most basic necessities. They resided in a small, dilapidated home that the local government had given them that hardly met the requirements for livability. The children were educated through a combination of Fiona's homeschooling and sporadic attempts to get them enrolled in public schools. However, peer bullying and financial limitations, such as the inability to purchase necessary school supplies, frequently hampered these efforts. Fiona thought that teaching her kids the fundamentals of reading, writing, and math at home would be enough to get them ready for adulthood. They resided in one of Devon's most impoverished neighborhoods, which was rife with social unrest and violence. Fiona herself experimented with illegal substances and occasionally drank too much booze. She nevertheless tried to protect her kids from her vices and keep them from forming bad habits of their own. But in the end, a difficult climate, a lack of money, and the availability of alcohol and illegal drugs led to a toxic environment for the family. Scarlet developed into an incredibly attractive and gregarious young lady. She wanted to travel the world and pursue a career as an actress or model. She spent a lot of time alone though, which caused her to associate with undesirable people. She was exposed to alcohol and illegal drugs by this gang at a young age. Fiona periodically discovered her smoking marijuana, despite her best efforts to conceal these activities from her mother. Fiona would chastise Scarlet but refrain from punishing her severely. Scarlet began dating people far older than herself by the time she turned 14. To be honest, Scarlet appeared older than her actual age, which frequently caused others to assume she was more mature than she actually was. She drank wine, was often at parties, and had a carefree outlook on life. Fiona insisted on taking Scarlet to a nearby clinic for a medical examination after she learned of this behavior, rather than enforcing complete bans. Scarlet received free contraception there. Fiona did not want her daughter to follow in her footsteps because she had become a mother at a very young age. Scarlet, like her many siblings, received the majority of her primary education at home under Fiona's supervision and seldom went to regular school. Everywhere she went, Scarlet's remarkable appearancia, model-like face, long blonde hair, and a trim figure attracted attention. She received her first tattoo when she was 14 years old, and she later developed an interest in body piercings, getting numerous on her face and body. Fiona started dating a man named Robert Clark in 2006. Fiona had never been with a partner as financially secure as Rob, who ran a small business. He got along well with Fiona's kids right on, showing them kindness and frequently giving them pocket money. After almost a year of dating, Rob came up with the idea of taking Fiona and her family to India for a long vacation. Rob wanted to share his love of India with Fiona and her kids because he had been there multiple times and was captivated by its culture. Following some discussion, the family chose to go to Goa. The itinerary called for exploring spiritual practices, unwinding by the warm ocean, and taking in the breathtaking natural beauty, rich culture, and tropical warmth of the area. This trip, which had begun with optimism and the prospect of a new beginning, would eventually take a terrible and dark turn that would forever alter the lives of all those involved. Rob, Fiona's partner, was paying for the whole family's trip, which made her uncomfortable. She took out all of her carefully saved money from government aid to help pay for at least some of her and her kids' expenditures. Since they had never left the UK or seen anything other than impoverished suburban districts, this trip was supposed to be an amazing and one-of-a-kind experience. Problems started even before the journey started. By this point, Fiona's oldest son, who was now an adult, was facing legal issues related to illegal narcotics. He stayed behind to guard their house when the rest of the family traveled because he was unable to get permission to leave the country. For himself, Fiona, and her 8 kids, Rob bought 10 aircraft tickets. The family took a plane to Goa in early November 2007 with the intention of staying there for 6 months, till the end of April 2008. Everyone was looking forward to the journey, especially Fiona's younger kids, who couldn't wait to swim in the water and unwind among the palm trees. On the northern coast of Goa, near the settlement of Anjuna, the family rented a seashore home. Anjuna was a popular destination for foreign visitors because it provided affordable lodging, a thriving nightlife, an inexhaustible supply of parties, and easy access to illegal narcotics like alcohol. With innumerable entertainment places open 24/7, the village was rife with hippie ideology and culture. The colorful and sun-drenched paradise seemed like a dream come true to a family used to the gloomy sky and humble way of life of England. The first several months passed quickly as people relaxed and explored, and the weather was ideal. However, the family had become weary of the non-stop commotion, parties, and throngs of tourists by the middle of January 2008. They also felt unsafe because of the province's high crime rates and chaotic atmosphere. In search of a more tranquil and calm experience, the family started talking about plans to depart from Anjuna and travel to other places in India. As the family prepared to move on, Scarlet unexpectedly refused to leave. She had formed a romantic connection with a local man named Julio Lobo, a Goan native 10 years her senior. Julio worked as a tour guide for a small beach tourist company. Scarlet's attachment to Julio became the central reason for her resistance, creating a tense situation within the family. Fiona reluctantly allowed Scarlet to take on small jobs to earn her own money. Scarlet handed out flyers and occasionally helped her boyfriend Julio with his tour guide business. Although her earnings were minimal, she was proud of her independence and begged her mother to let her stay in Anjuna, insisting she could take care of herself. Fiona strongly opposed the idea, believing it was reckless to leave her daughter alone in a foreign country with someone she barely knew. Scarlet, however, was persistent and argued that this would be an invaluable experience, helping her learn how to earn, budget, and support herself. For several days, mother and daughter argued over the matter. Fiona found it impossible to justify leaving her underage daughter behind, particularly in a place with such a wild reputation. Yet, Scarlet's determination eventually wore her down. Scarlet promised not to drink alcohol, avoid stronger substances, limit her attendance at parties, and never go out alone at night. Julio also assured Fiona he would take care of Scarlet and keep her safe. On the 18th of January 2008, Fiona, Rob, and the rest of the family left Anjuna for the nearby province of Arambol. From there, they traveled to Baga and then began exploring southern Goa, with its serene, endless sandy beaches. Despite their tight budget, which had been significantly depleted during the first months of their trip, the family made the most of their time and cherished every moment. In early February 2008, Fiona received devastating news from the UK. On the 8th of February, a hospital called to inform her that her eldest son, Halver, had been hit by a car while crossing the street. Although he survived, he suffered serious injuries, leaving him unable to walk and in need of constant care. Even before receiving this alarming call, Fiona had been considering cutting the trip short and returning home. Her relationship with Rob had grown increasingly tense in recent weeks, and the family's financial situation had deteriorated to the point where they could only afford a single hostel room for all of them and could eat just one meal a day. That same day, Fiona called Scarlet to share the news about Hal's accident and informed her of the family's plan to leave Goa and return to the UK. Scarlet, while upset about her brother's condition, expressed her reluctance to leave. Despite her objections, Fiona was firm in her decision. There was no way she would leave her daughter alone in a foreign country. Scarlet had established a pattern while living alone in Anjuna. During the day, she distributed posters advertising Julio's tour guide business and occasionally accompanied him as his helper. She worked as a waiter at different beach bars in the evenings. She spent her meager income on fun by going to parties at night. Scarlet had gotten to know many of the locals, especially those employed in the beach's nightlife and hospitality sectors. Scarlet was able to convince her mother to let her to attend a final party, to bid her pals farewell, when Fiona and the rest of the family went back to Anjuna to pick her up. Fiona reluctantly consented, thinking that nothing negative would occur. Scarlet planned to go to the event with Julio and his younger sister Ruby, intending to spend the night at Julio's aunt's house and meet her family the following morning. On the evening of the party, Julio unexpectedly fell ill with a fever and decided to stay home and rest. Scarlet and Ruby went to the party without him. They visited several beach bars, drank alcoholic beverages, danced, and enjoyed themselves. After midnight, Ruby began urging Scarlet to head home, but Scarlet insisted on staying a little longer, explaining that it was her last night out and she wanted to make the most of it. She assured Ruby that she would leave soon and head straight back to her family, planning to say goodbye to Julio the next day before leaving Goa. Around 1 a.m., the two friends parted ways. Ruby went home, and Scarlet stayed behind to continue enjoying the night. Before leaving, the two promised to keep in touch after Scarlet returned to the UK. Scarlet also shared her plans to come back to Goa after turning 18, intending to stay and live there permanently. Tragically, these dreams would never come true. Scarlet was never seen alive again. Scarlet's family was not informed of her altered plans, so they didn't detect right away that anything was off the next morning. Julio and Ruby thought her daughter had gone back to her family, but Fiona thought she had spent the night at Julio's aunt's house. Fiona was worried about Scarlet's absence and didn't phone Julio until it was afternoon to find out where her daughter was. Scarlet had intended to return to the family following the celebration, Julio informed her. Around noon on the 18th of February, 2008, people on Anjuna's main beach found a young woman's partially naked body washed up on the coast. The deceased was immediately recognized by staff at a local bar as Scarlet Killing, a part-time waitress who had been employed there. Her relatives had to provide the last word, though, and they were quickly contacted and brought in for identification. Fiona was heartbroken. It wasn't until she saw Scarlet's body at the morgue that she realized her daughter was no longer there. Although drowning was listed as the cause of death in the official report, Scarlet's body's state prompted substantial questions about whether or not she had endured brutal and protracted abuse. After identifying her daughter, Fiona went straight to the police to point out the suspicious circumstances surrounding Scarlet's death. First, most of Scarlet's clothing was missing. Second, Fiona noticed multiple bruises and injuries on her daughter's body, particularly in sensitive areas, which suggested potential physical mistreatment and intimate aggression. Despite these observations, local authorities seemed reluctant to investigate the possibility of a violent crime involving a foreign tourist, likely fearing that such news might deter other visitors. Officials claimed Scarlet had consumed excessive amounts of alcohol, gone swimming, and accidentally drowned. They suggested that her clothing had been pulled off by ocean currents, and that the injuries on her body were caused by sharp rocks along the shore. The police appeared eager to close the case quickly and pressed Fiona to sign the necessary paperwork. It took Fiona an entire month to challenge the official conclusion regarding her daughter's cause of death and secure a second autopsy. During that time, she relentlessly visited the police station and local government offices, submitting complaints and formal requests. Fiona insisted on viewing her daughter's body again, this time bringing her phone to document the bruises and injuries in detail. She feared that the case would be covered up, that something might happen to the remains, and that she would be left without any evidence. In addition to Fiona's efforts, Scarlett's relatives and friends conducted their own search for clues along the shoreline. In a patch of bushes near the beach, they discovered sandals, torn shorts, and a hair clip that belonged to Scarlett. The items were in plain sight, raising suspicions that the police hadn't even bothered to thoroughly examine the scene. The toxicology report, conducted a full month after Scarlett's death, revealed a lethal mix of strong alcohol and powerful prohibited substances in her system. However, very little water was found in her lungs, indicating that Scarlett had entered the ocean after she was already deceased. Fiona was convinced that her daughter had been drugged, assaulted, and then discarded in the water to cover up the crime. She believed the perpetrators hoped Scarlett's body would either drift into the open sea or that her death would be dismissed as accidental drowning. The second autopsy further supported these suspicions, uncovering over 50 distinct injuries on Scarlett's body. Some appeared to have been inflicted by bare hands, including bruises on her neck consistent with strangulation by fingers. Fiona, her family, Rob, and Scarlett's friends effectively took on the investigation themselves. They gathered information, searched for witnesses, and passed their findings on to the police. One significant lead came from Mike Masal, a British tourist who had been staying in Goa for the winter. Mike frequently visited local bars and occasionally saw Scarlett working as a waitress. According to Mike, around 3 a.m. on the night of Scarlett's death, she entered a bar where he was hanging out. She appeared highly intoxicated, barely able to stand, and slurring her words. Scarlett stumbled over the threshold, falling to the floor and needing help to get up. Afterward, she headed to the staff area, sat down, and began chatting with two men who worked there, Indian locals, one appearing to be in his 30s and the other over 40. Mike noted that Scarlett seemed familiar with the men, as their conversation was casual and filled with laughter. The two men kept making cocktails for her, one after another. Around 4:30 a.m. when the bar closed, most patrons left, and Scarlett departed with one of the men she had been speaking with. They walked along the beach, with the man supporting Scarlett, who was visibly unsteady. She went with him willingly. At one point, they veered off the well-lit section of the beach toward the bushes and disappeared into the shadows. Mike Masal, watching the scene unfold, had no reason to suspect a crime was taking place. He didn't call for help or alert anyone, assuming the interaction was consensual. Additionally, he didn't realize Scarlett was underage, as her appearance made her seem older than she was. After Mike shared his account with the police, they quickly tracked down and arrested the two men Scarlett had been seen with on the night of her death. They were identified as 35-year-old Samson D'Souza and 47-year-old Placido Carvalho, both local residents who worked at the bar where Scarlett had spent her final evening. On the 5th of June, 2008, the case was handed over to the Bureau of Investigation, and both men were charged with committing intimate assault against a minor physical assault and causing her death. However, both denied any involvement and maintained their innocence. The Goan authorities continued to delay the investigation. It took 2 years to gather evidence and prepare the case before it was finally sent to court in March 2010. Even then, the trial was postponed for another 3 years due to a lack of direct evidence. Any potential DNA traces had been washed away by the ocean, leaving the prosecution with a weak case. Another major obstacle was the absence of the key witness, Mike Masal, who had returned to the UK and refused to travel back to India to testify. He cited concerns for his safety, claiming to have received anonymous threats. Without his testimony, which was excluded from the case, the prosecution's argument began to crumble. Fiona personally contacted Mike and begged him to provide a statement on video, hoping to submit it as evidence in court. However, he declined, refusing to participate even in this way. Heartbroken, Fiona tried to appeal to his conscience, reminding him that while he hadn't intervened to save her daughter that night, he could at least help bring her perpetrators to justice. Even this failed to persuade him. Meanwhile, investigators in Goa attempted to shift the blame onto Scarlett herself. They argued that investigators in Goa attempted to shift the blame onto Scarlett herself. They claimed she had overindulged in alcohol, consumed prohibited substances, and either gone swimming or fallen asleep on the beach, leading to accidental drowning. Scarlett's personal journal was confiscated and scrutinized, with investigators highlighting entries where she expressed homesickness. These were misinterpreted as signs of depression and used to suggest she may have intentionally ended her life. Fiona actively countered these claims in court, presenting her own evidence to refute the accusations. Despite her efforts, the legal process dragged on for an agonizing 11 years, leaving the family exhausted and disheartened, struggling to hold on to hope for justice. From the start, the Scarlet Killing case attracted a lot of media attention and turned into a global controversy. Journalists paid close attention to Fiona and her family taking public photos of them, recording their living arrangements, and critiquing their looks and way of life. The situation was exacerbated as a result of the media's negative portrayal of the family. Robert Clark, who had split from Fiona, started interviewing her and painting her as a careless mother. Robert claims that Fiona neglected to adequately watch over her kids, gave them access to alcohol, and ignored other dubious behavior. He accused Fiona of essentially leaving her daughter in a foreign country to live with an older guy, and said Scarlet was a challenging adolescent who was attracted to parties, drink, and illegal substances. Additionally, he said that Scarlet embezzled funds from the family, making their financial difficulties worse while they were away. Tragic events occurred once more in 2012, when Fiona's oldest son died from a prescription drug overdose. Social services looked into the potential of taking custody of her surviving minor children after his death. Fiona continued to raise her family alone after winning her battle to keep custody. Due to insufficient evidence, both suspects in the killing case were suddenly acquitted in September 2016. Fiona, however, persisted in her quest for accountability and accused the legal system of corruption. A fresh trial with a different judge began when Fiona successfully appealed the court's ruling 6 months later. New information surfaced during this process. It was discovered that Samson D'Souza was connected to a criminal organization that distributed illegal drugs, some of which were kept in his house. This relationship suggested that he might have had access to the drugs that rendered Scarlet unconscious, which would have made it simpler for him to take advantage of her weak condition. Although Placido Carvalho did not take part in the assault physically, it was determined that he supported Samson's actions and helped him. There was evidence that the men added potent chemicals to Scarlet's beverages, causing her to overdose and die. According to toxicology findings, Scarlet passed away before her body was dumped into the sea in an effort to hide the crime. Placido had left the bar on his motorcycle approximately half an hour before his shift finished. Therefore, the charges against him were lowered to inciting. Placido was ultimately released by the court after being entirely acquitted. However, Samson was found guilty in July 2019 of assault and aggravating cause of death. He was sentenced to just 10 years in prison despite the seriousness of his offenses. Thank you all for watching. I really appreciate your support, and by sharing this video, leaving a comment, and clicking the subscribe and hit the bell icon for more true stories, and Aslo, click the like button, you can contribute to the growth of my channel. Your involvement has a significant impact. See you in the next video.